Hey, what is going on, guys? It's DK. Back at you with another video here for an early look breakdown of the Week 11 NFL main slate on Draftkings. Before I get into the video, if you guys are new to the channel, my name is DK. I make daily videos breaking down NBA, NFL, PGA, and esports daily fantasy sports slates. Before we get into the video, I want to thank you guys again for the continued support. It is greatly appreciated. The videos, the live streams on Twitter, as well as on Twitter. The easiest way to support me, since all the content is free, is just leave a like button on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit the notification bell so you know when I upload videos, you know when I go live. Of course, I'll be live streaming, as always, for the main slate 1 hour before lock on my YouTube channel. Also, we have the Monday Night Showdown slate tonight. I'll be live 30 minutes before lock going over everything, so make sure to check out the live stream for those, the Showdown slate tonight, as well as the main slate this upcoming weekend. Also, if you guys cannot watch the YouTube videos, I do upload an Apple Podcast. The link is in the description below. It's just the DK DFS show. But with that out of the way, let's jump into the video. So before we talk about players and their prices for Week 11, and it's crazy, we're already on Week 11. The NFL season is flying by. But yeah, before we talk about the players and the prices, let's take a look back at my lineup here from Week 10's main slate. So, Week 10, we talked about it in the live stream, the pivot I made late. About 30 minutes before lock, and it ended up hurting me. So that was super tilting. We went over the what I changed, right? So I originally had Aaron Jones here, I had Josh Reynolds here, and I had the Saints D here. If I stick with that, I have a really, really good day. But, that's how it goes for one lineup. Sometimes you make the wrong decisions, and, I thought about it. I was like, was that 3v3 pivot right? Like, did I make the right choice doing that? And I think the answer is no. I made a mistake. The reason being was I was so high in Josh Reynolds as a value, right? Talked about him all week, talked about him as my favorite value, him and Jakeem Grant in the live stream. And, the reason why I did it was because I had Kupp here and I wanted to bring it back. And again, I just think that's a mistake. You don't always have to bring it back with someone on the other side. So what I did was basically kind of a stack with obviously Murray, Hopkins, ran it back with John Brown, and then a secondary stack with Kupp and Lockett. I originally had Reynolds. I just had two guys from the Rams. But the reason I switched was because I kind of wanted a run back. And I think it's just a mistake, right? I got off of my favorite value play in Josh Reynolds to upgrade, and then I got on to Duke Johnson. Obviously, I preferred Aaron Jones, and then the Texans D was it was a defense that was more viable with the win. But again, originally was on the Saints. They were the defense I said was the safest. They actually had a really good day, so that hurt me. If I stick with what I originally had, it would have been an amazing day. But again, that's how DFS works. And if you're a one lineup guy like myself, sometimes those things happen. It's tilting, but I feel like was pretty spot on with the analysis this week, right? With the value in Reynolds and in Jakeem Grant, right, obviously was hammering down play Kyler Murray with DeAndre Hopkins all week. Sure, the value running backs were amazing, right? Mike Davis was only finished with 8 fantasy points. He actually got injured for a little bit there. Duke Johnson, I don't necessarily think that was the wrong play, right? He was their workhorse back. Like, he was out on the field basically the entire game. He got surprisingly no involvement in the pass game. Only had one target. That's why Duke Johnson is a guy that looks good, because he's always involved in the pass game. So I think that was more of an outlier, partly due to the weather, maybe. And then those receivers, right, those sped up receivers, with obviously, the guys in the Buffalo-Arizona game, as well as the Seattle and the Rams game. So, that's a look back there from my lineup. Hope you guys all had a good week yourselves. I know a lot of you had a pretty solid week. The Kyler to DeAndre Hopkins, Hail Mary, obviously, I know it put a lot of you guys in the money. So, that's a look back there from me. Again, I think I did make a mistake with that late swap. But again, that's how DFS goes sometimes. And I know, I'll get some positive luck here in the future. It doesn't always turn out bad when you make a swap. So, that's it for the look back of the main slate for me, Week 10 in tournaments. Again, I've only been playing tournaments, cash games. Talk about another video, but I think it's kind of dying now. Like, it's dumb. Like, it's basically like a 2v2 swap to whether or not you cash or not, because people have almost the same lineup in cash games every single week. So All right, let's review the Vegas numbers here, and then we can get to the player-by-player breakdown. So, yeah, the Thursday game, I'm super excited about that. I'll have a video out for that tomorrow. But yeah, main slate, not all the games are out yet, but let's review the ones that are out. We have Bengals, Washington, a 46.5 over-under. Washington are 1.5-point favorites. We have Patriots, Texans, a 48 over-under. Patriots are 2.5-point favorites. Steelers and Jags, a 47.5 over-under. The Steelers are 10-point favorites. Titans and Ravens, a 49 over-under. Ravens are 6-point favorites. Jets and Chargers, a 47 over-under. Chargers, 9-point favorites. We have Packers, Colts, a 51.5 over-under. The Colts are 2.5-point favorites. And that's what we got so far for the main slate. So let's start with quarterback. And if you notice, quarterbacks are pretty cheap for the main slate. We have Lamar at the top at 7.3. I like this price a lot on Lamar Jackson. I know he's not been amazing so far. He's definitely had a down year compared to last year, but the matchup here against Tennessee is really solid, and his just rushing floor, his rushing ability really raises his floor. The last 4 games, 108, 65, 58, and 55 yards in the ground. We know Tennessee has struggled in both aspects of defending the pass as well as defending the rush. They're definitely one of the worst defenses in the league. And you're getting a pretty cheap price tag on Lamar Jackson. So right now, he is the guy for me in both formats. I really like Lamar in both cash and GPP. Aaron Rodgers at 7K. He still put up a good performance, even with that win, to put up 29 fantasy points. He is always in play for me. You have a clear guy to pair him with, obviously, in Devontae Adams. So yeah, I think Aaron Rodgers is perfectly fine for a GPP play. Justin Herbert at 6'8 has been just really safe. Chargers, been throwing the ball a ton, 43, 42, and 32 pass attempts. That game against Miami was a little strange. They were down, and they kind of relied on the ground game even when they were down a couple scores. That was some questionable play calls for sure. But yeah, Herbert against the Jets is a perfectly fine play. I think he's priced about right at 6'8. Big Ben at 6'7". Well, the Steelers just abandoned the run game. It just boggles my mind that they just don't run the ball even when they're up big. They were winning big time that entire game, and Big Ben threw 46 times. So if they're going to continue to just not run the ball, then yeah, Big Ben is in play here against a really bad defense in Jacksonville. So, this is a tricky one. Does Pittsburgh continue just to completely ignore the run game and just focus on passing the ball? I don't know. But right now it's looking good for Big Ben and this passing attack here for Pittsburgh in a good spot. Drew Brees, we just got that news. He is out for this week, so we'll talk about Jameis Winston here in a sec. Deshaun Watson at 6'5", I think looks like one of the better plays right now for quarterback. My concern is New England is just, I don't like seeing New England on the slate because they just slow it down. They're just this really slow team. They're going to run the ball majority of the time. It just affects everyone in the game. So that is a little bit worrisome that, again, New England just plays so slow. But the positives here with Deshaun Watson is their defense they really struggle. So most of the time they're playing from behind. He flashed a little bit more rushing upside here recently. Last 3 games, 38, 50, and 36 yards in the ground. And the price dropped a bit. I do like Deshaun Watson here, a decent amount there. Bridgewater status is up in the air. We'll see if he does play. I actually think he's an okay play here against Detroit, another team that is really struggled defensively. Matt Ryan at 6'3 is always in play for me for GPPs. Probably can't go there in cash games. But him pairing him with either Julio or Ridley if he plays, that is always something I look to for GPP. So yeah, Matt Ryan once again in play in that format. Cam Newton at 6'2", tricky one. I like the matchup a lot, but like I said, New England is just a slow. They're just going to slow it down. They're just going to run the ball if they're playing from ahead. Right, the game against Baltimore, they were leading, only threw the ball 17 times. So that's not great. The positives here with Cam Newton is, again, he's running the ball more. This is a really good matchup. It's just I'm a little bit worried if they do play from ahead, they're really not going to have to air it out a ton. So there's some positives and negatives there with Cam Newton. Kirk Cousins at 6'2", kind of the same thing, right? Minnesota is just a run-first team. This is a really good matchup. But if Minnesota's playing from ahead, it's just going to be a heavy dose of Dalvin Cook the entire game. So that's the worry there with Cousins. I like the matchup a lot, but if they're playing from ahead, they are not going to pass the ball. Other options at quarterback. Let's see. Stafford at 6K. He was a little bit banged up. I think he'll be good to go. I think he's a fine option. I don't think he's going to break the slate. But, the matchup's fine. The price is fine. I think he's okay. Again, I'm not really going to prioritize Stafford. Other options. So Jameis Winston's below 6K. No Drew Brees. I assume he's going to be the starting quarterback. I mean, they do have Taysom Hill, I guess they could use, but we'll see. Jameis Winston throughout his career has put up really good games against Atlanta. So if he's going to start, I think he's someone you can look to. It is riskier because we haven't seen a ton of Jameis obviously this year, and he is prone to turnovers. Other options at quarterback. Carson Wentz at 5'7". It's a good matchup. We got to keep an eye on the wind here, though, in Cleveland because their last 2 home games have been terrible weather. So we'll see. Wentz is very up and down. But, probably couldn't go there in cash games. Like the upside there in GPPs. Again, 30 fantasy points in 2 of the last 4 games, but also 12 and 8 in there. So he's very up and down. I think he's someone you can look to, again, for GPP format. Phillip Rivers at 5'6", I guess is in play here, and he looked actually okay there against Tennessee, put up 20 fantasy points. Has had basically 20 fantasy points in 3 of the last 4 games, and the matchup here against Green Bay actually is pretty good. It's just, I don't like this Colts team at all. It's hard to nail down where the production is going to come from, right? They have 3 running backs, 3 tight ends, 3 or 4 wide receivers, and no one really stands out. So I guess Phillip Rivers is okay, but I'm probably not going to go to him either. Joe Burrow at 5'5". Back-to-back, not great performances. 18 and then 12 there against Pittsburgh. But that was against a pretty tough matchup. The matchup against Washington obviously isn't the best either. But this is more of a price point thing. And the fact that, Cincinnati has really been relying on Burrow to throw the ball. 47, 37, 40 pass attempts. So I think he's someone that you can look to for value. Other options at quarterback, mentioned Alex Smith as a potential value last slate. He actually was pretty solid, 19 fantasy points, the ball 55 times. The matchup there against Cincinnati is pretty good. And then, let's see, is there anyone else I want to mention here? That's probably it. PJ Walker, if Bridgewater is out, maybe you can give a look to him below 5K. If you guys follow my content through the XFL, he was someone that we were playing every single week. Rushing ability just has, had upside. We'll see if he can keep it, if he can, show that type of upside in the NFL. So maybe if Bridgewater is out, you could take a dart in PJ Walker. But again, the level of football is a lot higher here at the NFL. So really, for me at quarterback right now, it's looking like Lamar Jackson. He's the guy I really like. There are some other options, right? Obviously Deshaun Watson there in the mid-range thing looks pretty good. Matt Ryan always in play for GPPs and a couple of cheap guys we mentioned. But right now I think cash-in quarterback for me is Lamar Jackson. Running backs, so McCaffrey looking like he's not going to be good to go. At least the report that I saw today. So we'll keep an eye on that. If he does play here against Detroit, then I think he's a safe spend up just because of his talent. He's just going to be out there. We were worried that game against Kansas City about how limited he would be. He still played a majority of the game, and this matchup is really good. So if McCaffrey plays, I like him as a spend up. And then you have 2 guys in really, really good spots here in Kamara and Dalvin Cook. Kamara, honestly, last slate was a little bit tilting, right? Because people still want him. He had 3 touchdowns. Got a little bit lucky there if you played him with touchdown variance. And the fact that, the Saints surprisingly actually fell behind early a bit. The matchup here is really good against Atlanta, who has struggled defensively. Kamara is, again, basically a wide receiver and running back combined. The floor is high. Would not expect 3 touchdowns again. The price had come up, but I still think Kamara is a safe play there at the top. I also still think Dalvin Cook is a really good player, especially against Dallas. Really struggled defensively. 9K, sure, the price is up, but Minnesota is just going to run the ball a ton. The top 3 guys there with McCaffrey, Kamara, and Dalvin Cook, I think all look really good. Derrick Henry, for me, is a fade against Baltimore at 8K. Just no involvement in the pass game, snaps and going down. He is touchdown dependent. If he does not score a touchdown, he's not going to put up a good enough game at this price. So I don't want to rely on guys that have to score touchdowns to get there, especially in a bad matchup. So Henry, in my opinion, is a pretty easy fade. Aaron Jones, again, he was someone that I really liked last slate. Got a little bit unlucky. They gave a little bit, or Jamal Williams got more touches than we kind of expected. But that's always the downside of Jones is they still like giving carries to Jamal Williams. Aaron Jones is never going to be a true workhorse back, but he's always productive with his touches. This matchup here against the Colts is not amazing. I think he does fly under the radar, but Aaron Jones is someone that you can definitely look to for GPPs. Chubb and Hunt, I know Chubb had a good game last game, but it's just no involvement in the pass game. It's still going to be a pretty 50-50 split. I don't trust it. If you want to take a shot on him in GPPs, fine. Miles Sanders, another guy I mentioned liking. If you played him last slate, you got unlucky. He got vultured twice. Well, not really vultured, but guys like Boston Scott. But yeah, Boston Scott ran a long one in. Miles Sanders still did play majority of that game. He had 15 carries. He had 5 targets. The match against Cleveland is, Cleveland's a little bit more stout against the run. So Sanders, I think, looks okay. I think more suited for GPPs. Mike Davis at 6'8" got that big price hike. If McCaffrey's out, you can at least consider him, right? He has flash upside games with McCaffrey being out. But right now the price looks about right here. It is still a good matchup, but probably not going to really prioritize him. Connor against Jacksonville. Again, I don't know what Pittsburgh's doing. They're the game against Cincinnati, they were playing from a huge lead and they just continue to throw the ball. I don't get it. Connor is still a guy playing majority of the snaps, but right now they're just not running the ball. So hard for me to really get excited about James Conner, even in a really good matchup. Now, Zeke Elliott at 6'5", actually looks like a pretch decent play here. Matchup against Minnesota is really good. He's still playing a majority of the game. He had 18 carries, 2 catches, and 3 targets. I know the quarterback play is suspect here for the Cowboys, but that's kind of baked into the price at 6'5". And if Dallas can keep this one close, they will rely on Zeke a little bit more here. So I think he looks like a pretty decent play in the mid-range. DeAndre Swift finally got a majority of the touches there for Detroit. He had 16 carries, 5 catches, and 5 targets. Now the price did come up, though, from 5'1" to 6'4". But if he's going to continue to play a majority of snaps at running back, I think he looks like a pretty good play here against Carolina. So, I like Swift in the mid-range there, even with the price hike. I'm not going to get to James Robinson in a tough spot. The Mixon, Giovanni Bernard situation, we'll keep an eye on that. If Mixon's out, we could look to Gio again for value. Other options at running back, I'm not going to Taylor. His snaps went way down last game. Antonio Gibson at 5'8". The matchup is pretty solid here. Got, again, a little bit lucky there with the touchdown variance, scoring twice. We can't expect that every single week, that him to score 2 touchdowns. The downside here is they have J.D. McKissick, who they're using a lot in the passing down situations. Like Gibson is rarely out there in passing down situations. Did have 4 catches and 4 targets, but most of the time when they're in passing down, situations, it's going to be J.D. McKissick. So that lowers the floor on Gibson. I feel like people might chase it after seeing that 22 fantasy point game, but I'm going to pump the brakes. I think he's an okay play, but there's definitely risk involved. Damian Harris, I'm not going to mess with the New England running backs here. It is a good spot, but they use 3 backs. Other options, Keelan Balaji at 5'6". He actually did get a majority of the touches there for the Chargers. So he had 18 carries, 5 catches, and 6 targets, even with Pope and Kelly there. So if this is going to continue, if Balaji is going to continue to be the guy, then I kind of like him here against the Jets. This is a game the Chargers are probably going to be playing from ahead. Balaji getting the pass down work, getting a majority of the rushes, I think he looks like a pretty good play. Can we trust it? I don't know, because they still do have 2 of their backs. But right now, what we've seen recently, I think Balaji actually is in play. Giovanni Bernard at 5'5". He's still going to play majority of the snaps if Mixon is out. I think he will be once again in play for value if Mixon can't go. Duke Johnson with no David Johnson. Again, he was their workhorse back. Just had no involvement in the pass game. That was a little bit surprising. The matchup is not great here, but I think once again, he's someone you could look to as a cheaper back. McKissick, again, mentioned him at 5'2". He had 15 targets. Last couple of games, 14 and 15 targets. That is insane for a running back. I don't think we can expect that to continue, but Alex Smith is clearly the guy that's dumping off to the running backs a lot. So it's all about how you think this game flows. If you think Washington falls behind in this game like they did against Detroit, then that makes J.D. McKissick a lot more appealing. If you think they're playing from ahead, then maybe you look to Antonio Gibson. So again, that's all about how you think that game kind of flows. Naheem Hines at 5'2". He had a big week last week, 2 touchdowns. Did get most of the work there for the Colts, but they still have Taylor, they still have Wilkins. Can we trust this? I don't know if we can trust it. He did look good. The matchup here is good against Green Bay. I think he's in play, but only for GPPs. Cannot trust it in cash games. Cheaper running backs? Well, Salvon Ahmed at 4'8". He got a majority of the touches there for Miami. 21 carries. If he is going to continue to be their workhorse back, then I think he's definitely someone you can look to for value. And it's good what we saw last game. Like, he got a majority of the touches. If I was going to play someone in New England, one of the running backs, it would be Burkhead. He's actually looked pretty good with his limited touches. Did have 2 touchdowns last week. But again, nothing you can go to, obviously, in cash games. And that about wraps up for running back for me. So let's move on to wide receiver. Devontae Adams, he's really good. You can go to him every single week. Obviously, compare him with Aaron Rodgers. The upside is through the roof. Don't really have to tell you that every single slate. Julio is at 7-5 against New Orleans. The matchup is not necessarily the best, but if Ridley is out, that kind of raises the floor on Julio, who does have that big play upside, obviously, and love pairing him with Matt Ryan for GPPs every single week. Keenan Allen surprisingly only had 3 catches last week, yet did kind of get bailed out with a touchdown. Still did have 7 targets. The matchup here against the Jets, my concern here is, can the Jets score enough points where the Chargers have to air it out? But I think Keenan Allen is still once again in play. Michael Thomas is 7-3. This is kind of a nice buy low opportunity. He was once again disappointing, but they didn't really need him. Did have 7 targets. The matchup is good. He's not going to be playing with Drew Brees, but Winston's still a viable quarterback. I don't think like Michael Thomas all of a sudden is not a good wide receiver. Right? We saw he was clearly the best wide receiver last year and is putting up insane numbers. If I told you Michael Thomas would be at 7-3 against Atlanta last year, like he would be 95% owned, right? So I kind of like Michael Thomas here as a buy low. That price does look appealing. It's definitely tempting. Calvin Ridley, we'll have to monitor that throughout the week with his injury status. Terry McLaurin is just in play every single week. He just continues to put up, double-digit fantasy points, every single week, 14, 22, 27, 18 fantasy points. The matchup here is good. I think McLaurin, again, is once again in play. The Steelers wide receivers. So if Pittsburgh is going to continue to abandon the run game, then I like all 3 Pittsburgh wide receivers. And Juju, Claypool, and Deontay Johnson. For me, I'll just pick the cheapest of the bunch with Deontay, who continues to put up big performances, getting targeted a ton. The matchup is really good here. And like I said, Pittsburgh is just not running the football, even when they're playing from ahead. So I like all 3 Pittsburgh wide receivers here. I think they look pretty good. Thielen is an interesting way to kind of pivot off, I think, will be a pretty popular Dalvin Cook. If Minnesota does fall behind, we've seen some big games here from Thielen, but right now, again, they're run first team, so the price does look appealing. The matchup's good. It's just the concern of if Minnesota's playing from ahead, they're not really going to throw the ball a ton. Same thing I have to say with Justin Jefferson there at 6K. Then we get to this mid-range. It seems like this year, it's literally been the guys at the top and then the really cheap wide receivers. Like, I have not been playing a ton of the wide receivers in the mid-range, and it kind of is looking at once again. Like, I'm not really excited about a lot of these guys. Tyler Boyd, I think actually looks okay here at 5'6". He continues to put up consistent numbers. He's getting targeted a ton of the slot. Like, I think he's a fine option there in the mid-range. Marvin Jones Jr., mentioned him last week, did kind of have a breakout week at 8 catches and 10 targets. For a touchdown. If Galladay continues to be out, I think he's a fine option there in the mid-range as well. Other guys, at Cooper at 5'4". I know the quarterback play is suspect here for Dallas, but this is a really good spot here against Minnesota. I think he looks like an okay play, but I do probably prefer Gallup, who looks like a pretty appealing play at below 4K. We'll talk about that in a sec. Other options, a wide receiver, Jacoby Myers is turning into their number 1 guy. 10, 14, and 7 targets. He is basically playing the entire game. The matchup is really good. It's just if you play him, you kind of got to hope New England falls behind. If New England falls behind a couple scores in this game, I think Jacoby Myers could blow the roof off this slate at 4-9. But if they get off to an early lead, we know there is slow it down offense, hand the ball to Damian Harris for 3 yards up the gut every single play, right? Like, that's the Patriots. So all about how you think the game flows there. Other options at wide receiver, Curtis Samuel. If McCaffrey's out, I think would look a little bit better. He's a guy that they're giving some carries to. Did kind of have an off week last week, but previous week, 17, 21, and 29 fantasy points. And we know, again, Detroit has really struggled. So I think Samuel looks like a pretty good value option. I think all 3 Colts receivers are in play here with Pascal, with Pittman, with T.Y. Hilton. Good luck trying to pin down which one's going to be. But all are cheap enough prices in a matchup against Green Bay that there's going to be points scored. Right now, it's the highest over under the slate. So all 3 Colts receivers are in play for me. It's just like I said, it's hard to nail down which one it's going to be. I think Jalen Reagor looks okay here at 4-3. Cleveland struggled. He's a guy that last couple games 7 and 6 targets. So yeah, I think Jalen Reagor actually is a pretty nice value. Then we get to guys below 4K. A couple options I do want to mention here. Let's see, Michael Gallup at 3.7. I know, like I said, Dallas suspect quarterback play, but last couple games 12 and 7 targets. Matchup's good. I think Michael Gallup does look like a pretty nice value here at his price. Let's see. Other options of wide receiver, I've mentioned KJ Hamler the last couple slates is one of the better value plays. 10 and 10 targets. He continues to put up pretty solid performances, and Denver is a team that is most likely to be playing from behind. If Drew Lock's good to go, I think KJ Hamler, even in a tougher spot, looks like a pretty decent value option there. Let's see. AJ Green, back-to-back donuts. Or actually only a donut last week. I thought he had a donut 2 weeks ago. I think you could buy low. He's been very up and down, right? If you just look at his game logs. But he's still flashed some upside here with games like where he's been targeted a good amount. We know Cincinnati is going to be trailing most weeks. So, yeah, I think you can look to in GPPs. Don't know if you can really feel comfortable with that in cash games. Other options, Jakeem Grant was, again, it was him and Josh Reynolds as the top value plays I talked about all week, as well as in the live stream. He had 4 catches and 5 targets. He is their number 2 wide receiver. I think he's, once again, in player. He's a speedster. He has the ability to break the slate. Like, he can definitely break a long one here. I think Jakeem Grant, once again, is in play for me for value. And I also kind of like Denzel Mims, the 3-3. I know it's the Jets. I know. But he is still going to play a majority of the game. He had 8 targets last week. I think he's in play for value at 3-3. It's just a price point thing with him. So that about wraps it up for wide receiver. Let's finish it up with tight end. Mark Andrews, I think, would be the only guy I would pair with Lamar Jackson. Had 9 targets last week, and the matchup is pretty solid here. We do have Nick Boyle out as well, so looking like I think that actually does boost Mark Andrews. Maybe he plays a little bit more here. The price is below 5K. He obviously has touchdown upside, even though he hasn't scored the last 4 weeks. I kind of like Mark Andrews here at 4.9. He's the only guy I would pair with Lamar Jackson. Obviously, you can run a naked Lamar Jackson because of the rushing upside. Tight end is just, it's not been great last few weeks here. Hunter Henry is always someone I'll mention because he's going to continue to run a ton of routes. The targets have been consistent on him. I think Hayden Hurst looks pretty good here at 4.4, especially if Ridley's out. He'll get, probably targeted a bit more, 7, 8 targets. He's still a guy running a ton of routes as well. He's been a really safe option. I like Hurst there as a guy they can look to in both formats, in my opinion. Hawkinson at 4.2. Finally, we got that price decrease from him. Finally, if Galladay's once again out, I think he's viable here. Did kind of have a letdown week last week, but again, now we're getting him at a cheaper price where I think he's in play at 4.2. Other options like Ebron's at 4K. Again, Pittsburgh just continues to air it out if they're playing from ahead or behind, so Ebron's a viable, cheap option. Dallas Goedert's below 4K. I kind of like the price on him with still no Zach Ertz. Cleveland has struggled to defend the pass. Obviously, we'll have to monitor the weather here in Cleveland, but if it's good weather, I think Dallas Goedert looks like a pretty nice, cheap option. Same thing with Dalton Schultz. Again, questionable quarterback play, but 8 and 7 targets back-to-back games. This is a pretty good spot. Logan Thomas, I've mentioned him every week. He's still running a ton of routes. Washington's most likely to be playing from behind. A lot of these games, 6 and 6 targets in back-to-back games. I think Logan Thomas is once again in play for value. But I think that really wraps it up for tight end for me. Maybe we'll get some value opening up throughout the week, but that's about it, the extent for tight ends that I'm looking to. In defense, we'll talk about that more in the final look video as well as on the live stream Sunday morning. So that's going to wrap it up for the video today, guys. If you have been enjoying the content so far, I would really appreciate it if you'd leave a like button on the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Again, hit the notification bell so you know when I upload videos, so you know when I go live. Thanks again, guys, and I will see you all in the next video.